Can you actually believe? Look at this now, right? Now they're saying Bill Gates is unveiling a global digital ID and currency that he says are necessary to grant people access to financial services, healthcare, education, and elections. He says to grant to, we've already got that access. That statement is trying to make out that there is no such thing, it doesn't exist and you can't have it. He's about to invent it. How did Bill Gates get to school? Before Bill Gates was born, there was nothing, almost like he came out of some space-time continuum and the world just suddenly appeared. Not like, the votes of everyone in the past actually got the government to where it was, and all the technology and previous inventors, like Alexander Bell, who invented the telephone, and various other scientists and inventors wrote things down with a pencil and paper and so forth and made discoveries in books, in libraries, in records, in order for these people to even build this system. And now they're going to say, oh, right, we're going to scrap books. We don't want books anymore. And then, by the way, when they scrap all the books, then, all the scans of the books, we've had a computer failure and we've erased them all by accident. Oh, what a shame. We'll have to reinvent the entire history of the planet. Who does Gates actually think that he actually is? Do you know what I mean? We can't have these things unless they're in digital. It's almost like saying that, well, it's a miracle that they ever existed in the first place, right? What he means to say is that unless you have this digital ID, he or, them cannot fully, absolutely control and dictate to us what we can and can't do. If you don't have this digital ID, we won't be able to utterly and completely and totally surveillance and control everything you do. Absolutely regulate it beyond the recognition and ideology behind the word freedom and liberty, because after all, law and order was meant to be based on the common law and what your peers think after the facts have been put on the table, whether they think that you should be punished or not, right? But not under this automatic, get a fine through the post system, consent, submit, agree, accept, right? They actually want to, they think that just because, right, and this is purely on money, because Bill, right, ran a successful computer company and made lots of money, shook hands, did business deals, made more money, purely because he was a good businessman. And let's face it, some people are really trying to be that successful at business and fail. Other people don't believe in the concept and idea of taking that money off people. They believe in charity, or they don't think that anyone should be allowed to amount that sort of money, purely on the basis that I think, I've got a shitload of money and I've just bought everything on the planet. He believes that the whole world, every single independent country and peoples who have developed and evolved over millions of different years in many different diverse ways, that everyone should suddenly adopt his way of doing things, his idea and his laws, and other islands, countries, continents don't have a legal right to do their own separate thing. Where is the diversity and inclusion? It's not like diversity and inclusion. It's actually, inclusion or exclusion, right? This isn't inclusion or exclusion. It's not diversity and inclusion, because when you're included, how is there any diversity in ideas? And what happens if this idea fails, right? What happens if there's one scientist has said that there might be a big sun flare or a sunburst, and it can actually take out lots of digital systems and things like that and cause a lot of damage to them, right? It's not just that. It's the fact that the people at this exact moment in time as we're speaking now, right, I can tell you by fact what the government are doing is illegal. And how they're doing it now is illegal. Election law is being broken. there's a social media revolution where many of the MPs who are elected into Parliament who are now voting on these laws and voting them through, they're not in there lawfully, because since at least 2005, since Facebook and YouTube started, they've been putting election material and adverts up on there and not taking them down after the election's over, right? After the election's finished, they're going to take the material down. They've left them all up, right? And encouraged other people to share them and put them up and not told them that, they should take them down, right? This has actually been how reformers got so popular so quick, right? And that is widespread election corruption, right? But there are many other things they've been doing illegally, like they've been over-enforcing that Section 230. They could have upheld it. Parliament could have upheld it. The BBC is going to be taxpayer funded, but it actually coerced us all onto Facebook, right? Digital ID. And then Parliament are advertising these private company platforms. So Parliament are actually doing adverts for private companies, but with our taxpayer money. And they've actually, you could have had companies that weren't run by Bill Gates. You could have had companies that weren't run by Mark Zuckerberg. You could have had platforms which didn't have consent submit accept policies, which had very futuristic digital ideas which were different, which actually might have even been a free platform, right? And they didn't want to make money out of it. They just wanted to provide it out of the goodness of their hearts or not take over the world like Google have done, right? But then these people are branching out into all this genetic engineering, designing what humans should be and shouldn't be like, whether to have males or females. That's going beyond, I provide computers, I'm Bill Gates. They're actually taking over every single different business sector that you can get, and then buying land. This is megalomania. Every definition of every word in the dictionary that has ever been, right? And people have said, the government were running advertisements going, don't talk to strangers, or, don't accept sweets from strangers, or this or that, or if a guy follows you around with a clipboard, he's acting suspicious, right? That's stalking, right? There's some guy following me, taking notes on me, right? What's happened, right? Where suddenly the government and every definition of every dictionary known to mankind, right? Intelligent people, right? Who have had societies and cultures all through history, all through the medieval period, 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, intelligent people who went to meetings and debated. These words mean something, right? How can the definition of a stalker, right, and a voyeur, right, and a spy suddenly be a good thing? Oh, it's great now, right? Oh, yeah, we need more. It's Bill, the stalker. Hey, Bill, Bill the stalker, Bill the spy, right? How has he managed to make it so these weirdos, and I say criminals, which is abnormal behaviour, right? Not normal human behaviour, abnormal. Now, suddenly, the newspapers and the magazines and the media, oh no, this is great. We need more spies, and we need more perverts, more people spying on us, right? Now it's suddenly a good thing. I mean, we're talking about the entire history of countries, their models of operating, which have been voted on and argued, and that is why we've had supposed to have the military. Are you going to tell me, right, that we've been paying billions for a military to protect our country, and let me quote these exact words, right? Foreign threats to our democracy, right? You're telling me that we've been paying for security services and weapons, tanks, bombs and guns And the excuse is to protect our country, its laws and democracy from a foreign attack, right? And now you're telling me that some guy says that, we'll have to chuck all that in the bin now. It's a bit past its time. It's a bit out of date. The world's going to be governed by my new digital ID system. What the fuck were we protecting? Is this guy from a foreign country? The Prime Minister of England, Keir Starmer, right? He has led the Crown Prosecution Service, and he has undermined political rights by which we use to get laws made and changed, redress grievances and complain about misconduct in government, right? And that process has been obstructed by evil councillors, judges and ministers, which is the highest crime you can get. And now Keir Starmer, it's not a crime because, by the way, the whole way through, we were going to welcome in Bill Gates' digital ID. So what were we doing it for? Have you actually read some of this? Critics say that people will not be able to engage in basic societal services if they are deemed non-compliant, and it will be erased from society. They will be erased from society. We haven't even got this digital ID yet in England, right? And I've been on the Fiverr website, and I asked this guy if he'll do some Google or Facebook ads for me, right? Because I don't have the account, and if you've been doing it for a longer period of time, you don't have any limits on, you're not limited to how many adverts you can put, because otherwise, if you're a new customer, they put like a cap on. You're only allowed to have a maximum number. And I don't even believe in Google or Facebook ads anyway, but I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could get some sharing of that Stop Digital ID petition, right? And now the seller just said, I don't want your business, and just blocked me, right? Now, if that was a shop, if you walk into a shop, right, to buy a can of pop and they wouldn't let you in and lock the door, you would start to think there was something wrong, particularly if you hadn't actually done anything wrong at all. And if you're just, walking down the street and you saw a fancy kind of Diet Coke, right, just lock the door on you, right? That's actually discrimination. They've been putting all these laws through, right, for like discrimination if you're a man or a woman, or, for any particular thing. But their system is discriminative. It's actually discriminative. They're actually, these people are compulsive liars. You cannot trust them with anything. They're only interested in your money and profit, and this proves it. They're not interested in your, they have no mercy. You cannot go and seek forgiveness or anything. This is like a absolute, complete and utter hell, right? Gates is saying that once digital ID and currency is accepted by all, nothing can or will be done with traditional systems. But that's money. Our country is based on the fact of the right to trade. Now, the word trade means that you give someone something and they give something back. It's a swap, right? It still means that you've got the legal right to say that if your friend has got like some duck eggs, right? You'll swap him them for a DVD or a CD, right? Because that's a trade. You're trading with him, right? That's the basis of it. And you've actually got the legal right to trade like a token for something, right? You're not just having credits on a computer system which transfers credits. You've got an actual physical thing, and you don't actually need anything other than a physical thing. It's actually a fundamental part of being a human being, right? To swap an object, to swap a physical thing. If you are in the wilderness, right, and you find a strawberry, right, and, it's not, no one says that you stole it from private land or anything, right? You've got a strawberry, right, and if you happen upon someone who's got a raspberry, right, or 5 raspberries, right, you do a trade, right, and you swap them. Now, Bill Gates is trying to make out that that's not possible in his world, but that's what the world is. It's a world of rocks and stones and trees and valleys and rivers. Even though Bill Gates has bought them all, we're going back to now. We're going back to this, like, oh, the king's deer and the king's land, and, the people are petitioning the king whether or not, they can have a little bit more land from him and, have some of his deer, right? Because the community, would like it, and then they petition him, and the community does not want it. Well, then the community all sign it to prove that they do, and then they send it back and say, well, we do because we've got all the signatures there, right? Will you have the right to petition Bill Gates under this thing? Will you have the right to petition Bill Gates like you have the right to petition the king, or does it have to be digital and e-petitions? They don't accept paper petitions anymore, right? To scrap paper and pens and say that, we don't even use paper anymore. You can't, it's like your kids drawing a picture at school, right? In pens. And then the teacher says, oh, you can't do that. It's illegal. You have to do it on Etch-a-Sketch. We only have like digital pictures in schools, Etch-a-Sketch, right? Well, how do you put it on the wall and or print it out, right? Well, just a minute, but we'll have to have finished printing out Etch-a-Sketch because I could have drawn it by my hand, right? Oh, well, no, it has to be printed out by official Etch-a-Sketch print, because that's Etch-a-Sketch drawing number 7354 and it's all recorded on the system, right? We can't have any unauthorized pictures that someone might have drawn. Hey, you hand wrote something. It's unauthorized, right? It's almost like printing money. It's like I drew a picture by hand and it's all, no, it's illegal because like you didn't draw it on Bill's Etch-a-Sketch and print it out and it didn't get a ticket number. That's like all these. They were starting to do this with artwork. They were starting to tag artwork with like, so you could have Bitcoins and get it sort of like tagged. This is just ridiculous. It's so ridiculous against what it is to touch another human being. What it is to actually have anything in your room around you that's made out of something physical, like a paperclip or something, or soil, it's just absolutely freaking ridiculous. The fact that someone would want to do it, right? Notice it's not Charles doing it, or if it is Charles, he's using Bill Gates to front it. Can you imagine, right? If this was Charles's idea, or he admitted it was, or if King Charles, right, if it was King Charles who had pitched this, right, to the world, and he'd signed it right off and said, oh yeah, we're doing this digital ID thing, everyone will have to submit consent. The Americans, right, would go absolutely up the bloody wall, right? The Americans, citizens, would not accept it because, like, they fought a war for independence, right? It's they're doing it from these other people, and they're all having to play a part in it, as Trump's doing a bit of it, and Tony Blair's got his foot in it, and now Bill Gates, and they're all trying to do it to maneuver on us because apparently Gates is taking, Gates is apparently now, stepping up to the podium and putting his name to it, right? I'd like to see him. He's actually going to vote this through. Is it going to be in one vote? Is it going to be in one global vote? And then obviously the vote's going to use their systems, right? The whole thing is absolute. It's the way they're doing it. They couldn't just pull this on us, like, just big reveal, right? They've had the fact that they've had to sneak it and had to do it in separate parts that all fit together and do a different part of the strategy in a different country. And then when social media comes, in order to do it, they've had to break the law, right? They've had to break the actual law and act criminally. So it can't be valid. And if they ever did it, it's almost like, it is like the Roman invasion of England or the Roman invasion of Europe, and like it's like the Battle of Hastings, right? You can challenge, they have to fight for it. It has to be a fight because this is the thing. Our government in England are criminals at this moment in time. Sir Lindsay Hoyle always done loads of service for his electorate. Like, I've had it with them. The criminals. there's widespread election corruption. They've all got election adverts on their Facebook pages that they didn't take down within 14 days after the election, and they're still having an effect on people who visit the websites. They're using those websites for Parliament now, not for an election. They're advertising those pages on Parliament's website with our money. So all these big companies are actually being advertised by the government. Why those companies? You know, if it was Dragon's Den, you know, our Dragon's Den helping them, how could, you know, I can't see how Alan Sugar would even agree with this, because if you've got 10 platforms and you're having a fair competition in a fair market, which David Cameron's always going, oh yeah, competitive market, right? If you've got 10 platforms and they've all got a fair business potential, but that Parliament is advertising 3 or 4 of them and not the others, and encouraging people to use them, and those happen to be the ones that are implementing all these, you know, policies, accept, submit, consent, right? And then they're the ones who are breaking the laws, but they didn't advertise the other ones who have got a different idea of doing it, where it's not for profit, they were going to do it for free, and or not make you consent and accept all these other things, right? Then the government is actually unfairly assisting selected businesses over others, and actually helping them make millions and billions, because they're agreeing to this certain strategy plan, which, after these businesses have forced us to accept it by submit, consent, accept, then the government say, oh yeah, we're doing this now, didn't you know? But then the other businesses didn't actually have a fair advertisement or chance to do the alternative. So how can that be democratic? It's actually against all business principles. And the fact that most of these businesses had sold out to these big companies, it's just absolutely despicable. Have you actually read this? Once you have a digital ID money system, then all sorts of services and applications that can be built on top of that, whether it's health or education or agriculture. However, many of the warnings about the system of digital control that will managed by Gates, the UN, and the global elite to build what they call the model of the future, with the plan to merge banking, voting, medical, and why would you want to? It's just ridiculous. It's trying to make out that Britain has actually done the digital ID. Well, it's forcing it on the business aspect of it now. It's October, that they're doing it in these next few months. Keir Starmer needs to be prosecuted now. Keir Starmer, he isn't the Prime Minister of England. Keir Starmer, he led the CPS and he violated our constitutional rights by prosecuting protesters illegally and other people who had done political actions. And then he tried to make out he was helping them from that, power station in East Yorkshire or whatever it was, right? Oh, no, he said when he said he was going to sort it all out. No, he didn't sort it out, because then he would have admitted that it was actually contemptuous what they did against him, right? All those undercover police, when it was a political action. He can't be the Prime Minister. You're not allowed to have a Prime Minister who's had a previous criminal record of being a criminal, right? And he needs to be prosecuted for that now and held to account for it. This is the thing. All of the 2024 general election is not a valid election. It has got widespread election corruption, right? All of the main parties have got election adverts on their social media, which they didn't remove after 14 days of their election. That is an illuminated advert. When I go onto their screen, when I go onto their Facebook page and open the advert, I'm holding it in my hand on a fucking illuminated screen. That is an illuminated advertisement relating to an election, right? In the 2005 Control of Advertisements, it says it's removed in 14 days, right? And that the reason for that is because it complies with the other acts. I'm not even going to go into those other acts, because I know that it's 14 days, because it wouldn't say it were 14 days if it wasn't fucking 14 days, right? Further to that, those pages they use to get elected, then they change, once you get elected, you change it to, oh, now I'm an MP, now I'm using it for my parliamentary business, and to have up, for informing my electorate what I'm up to in Parliament. And I've got the link on my Parliament website, right? But it's still got the fucking election adverts on there. And they're still having an effect and influence generally all around the country for these by-elections that are taking place, and people searching, for Labour and Conservative. It advertises the whole party, right? Not just one candidate, right? It's widespread election corruption. It's completely and totally, utterly corrupted. Nick Clegg is one of the main institutors in this, right? Nick Clegg is one of the main people because he cheated in his election. I know that he did. He could have been prosecuted. You didn't needed £5,000 to challenge it, right? Because the police wouldn't have done a sweet FA, right? Clegg claims he's a liberal, right? He cheated. He got extra popularity from his radio show. He went on to become the Deputy Prime Minister of England. He didn't do anything about all this when Facebook and YouTube was getting popularity. The BBC told everyone to go on Facebook, right, and create a digital ID. And then Clegg goes on to work at Facebook, being the global president, and then he has got the cheek to go on there with Mark Zuckerberg saying, these platforms are rushing ahead. They're wanting to try and advance things too quickly, and government can't keep up with them. And, we'll have to try and sort the legislation out to keep up with it all. No, Nick, right? You broke the fucking law to get elected in Sheffield. Then you knew very well what the platforms were doing, and yet you completely and totally broke the fucking election law. And when you were in government, you may be a liberal, but you didn't even uphold our constitutional rights in England when we don't have Section 230 here, right? And in fact, Parliament has been encouraging more use of social media and making them money, advertising them, not just advertising a phone number. And I know that the Americans are a little bit different because the Americans actually have like letters and numbers in their phone numbers. Americans have called Dr. Nick 3785 or whatever. It has like words in there, but we don't. We don't have words on our telephones. We only have numbers. In England, a phone number has never, ever advertised any fucking company, right? And you can transfer it to any... It's just a number, right? And you have an address. You write to an address at Parliament, right? Okay, that advertises nothing. At parliament.uk, right? That's Parliament, right? I ain't telling people to go on, Hotmail. Now, if you say email... That is a general form of something. It's like a telephone, right? The telephone is not, BT, right? You call it the telephone, right? It's not advertising BT because you've got Orange, EE, Vodafone, Virgin, and loads of other phone companies, right? This is the thing. Now, I mean... You might as well have Parliament, might as well fucking have Virgin Bet on there, would Branson be pleased if every MP on the contact page, had, contact, I don't know, David Davis at virgin.net or go in his Virgin page or whatever. I don't see any Virgin advertisements on there, right? They're not advertising Richard Branson on there. I don't know what contracts and deals he's got with the government, but I'm talking about actually on the main contact page for the MPs, right, which is quite important because it's actually encouraging people to use those things and contact them through there, right? That is... Parliament is not meant to be advertising specific private companies to have a preference over... certain things than others. That's why they're meant to have their own publishers, really, like Hansard or whatever. It's meant to be specialised just for parliamentary stuff and the stationery office, right? Then it's not advertising it in that type of way. In fact, they advertise the book by its title, not by the publisher, right? And Hansard's meant to be particularly a parliamentary thing, right? And Hansard aren't taking over the world of the social media, Like, Hansard definitely are not trying to strategically take over the world and the government by buying absolutely everything and so forth and so forth. They're just like printing books, right? This is the thing. But these social media platforms are trying to replace all the other forms of communication. It's completely, you'd have to be a lunatic to actually even think that you had the right to do this to other countries. I mean, do you know what this does, right? All of the people who have ever died from a war, all of these people who've been dying in Ukraine, right, because of the different countries, and all of the people, like we've got these war memorials in England, right? We've got these war memorials in England, right? And, like, the government make a big deal out of it. They have all these, like, ceremonies, like, it's like Poppy Day, right? And then they go around selling poppies over the whole country. And you've got all these old people, right? And then they go to these war memorials and they got all the horses out, right? And then they got Charles there. And then the whole city stops, like, for 1 minute silence. They get everyone to shut up and stop, and even the radio, they turn the radio off, like, for 1 minute silence, right? Because to remember all the people who died, right? Fighting for the countries, right? Actual ancestors, and this is like Tony Blair's or someone else's problem. This is a thing. This is like Bill Gates. Oh, Bill, well, let's all join hands together and unite in the whole world. Fight the war, fuck the norm. This is it. Forget all that. Forget all that. It's all history. It's nothing. We've got no grievances against everyone. The insult to actually the TV to make such a big deal out of all these war and ancestors dying, and all of Vietnam as well. Remember, the Americans had Vietnam as well, right? And then all that money, and then people having to go to war to die, to fight to protect your laws, and then Bill just goes, oh yeah, we're just going to scrap all that, fuck it, it's like Tony Blair or someone else's problem. It's, how can you dare do that? I mean, how would you even dare do it? It's just like saying nothing matters except this thing that I'm working on, whatever it is. It could be anything, but it's digital ID. Yeah, we're going to take over the world and change the world. It's just my latest thing I've been working on. Actually, bought everything as if he owns it. We're going back to square one with like, it's Charles's deer. This is my hunting grounds. These are my lands. I own it all now. We got all these MPs saying, we don't want to go backwards. We don't want to go backwards. We don't want to live in medieval times. We're going to the future. There's Bill Gates fucking buying everything. This is always my land and my deer. As if it's always my fucking pond and my pool. It's like reading some 1700s fucking thing about, being on someone else's land. That's going backwards. If we were going forwards, then you wouldn't actually be able to own actual private land, and it would all be public property, But we seem to be going back to, there are a lot of elements of, they're even calling it devolution. They're even throwing around these words like devolved government or devolution. At the same time, they're talking about technology and innovation. They'll actually say anything now. They'll actually say anything to get what they want. And they'll say the next thing the next day. They'll do absolutely anything, and they'll say absolutely anything. One day it could be yellow, then green, then red, then purple, then pink, then it's like positive, then it's negative, then it's all male or female. They'll just absolutely, completely and totally, utterly fucking say anything and then completely contradict it the next day to get what they want. It's, look, right, it ain't normal. There's one thing about Bill Gates that you cannot deny. It's not normal. Now, either he's not normal, he's abnormal, he's irregular. It's not a normal thing to do. It's not, and therefore his mental state, no matter how normal he appears to be or tries to be casual and talks, it isn't the average person. Because the average person wouldn't, if you're in that position, your psychological and mental state cannot be like a regular person, right? It can't be normal. You can't qualify it as normal. So the ideas that he's coming out with and the things that he's doing can't be normal. So that means that either you have to qualify and classify him as irregular, odd, or not normal, or you have to say that he's some sort of Superman, like, Clark Kent, right? Like he's some kind of superhuman with superpowers or whatever. So either he's, and even then, even if he is, but we're not. So, but going by what the books say, all these things that are being done to us are actually meant to be bad things. But notice now that suddenly, now they're apparently meant to be great things, like, spying and surveillance on everyone and planning and stalking on people. Those were the things that you were supposed to be wary of and watch out for. But now because, the famous people are doing it with loads of money, it's okay. But, aren't they the sort of people that you're watching out for? This is the thing. I'm starting to wonder, after I read the Samuel Johnson dictionary report on heroin, right, and opium, and I know that Henry VIII was meant to be an addict on it, although that's hard to believe from his paintings because, like, he looked quite overweight and fat in some of the paintings, and opium addicts were supposed to lose a lot of their weight and end up being quite unhealthy, right? So, how legitimate is that painting? Is that a fake painting, or did they paint a false picture, or was it done, earlier? I don't know. But he was Henry VIII is reported to have meant to have been an opium addict anyway. But I think they were all on it. I've got a feeling now, reading from the effects of it, and reading from, the standard life of the peasants and the serfs and the other people who were, poor, and they were all, making corn and things like that. I've got a feeling that when it came to, like, the Norman conquest and then them building these castles and taking over and the meanness of it, because the Normans were meant to be, kind of mean, but how have you got the balls to do it? How have you got the courage and balls to do it, if they're not on something, right? And also the downside of it is that they're getting all these nasty, sinister thoughts when they're down, and they're taking that all out on the people, right? But then they've got this confidence and, immense, seem to be able to evade pain. I think, clearly from that Samuel Johnson dictionary, there was something going on with the Roman army, right? Definitely, for sure. And I think with the Norman conquest, I think that the Norman elite were all on opium, and I think because it's the only way, if you look at it, the sinisterness of it, and the nasty things that you end up having to do to people as well, like all these hangings and all things like that, the dirty, sinister side of it, I'm sure there's something going on with it because, the extent of it in the Far East, they said they were growing it in fields like we were growing corn, just all over the place. And, there is a difference in people between us and them. There's some evolutionary distinction going on there, right? And, that area seems to be at constant war all the time. They don't seem to be able to get out of war. I actually believe that it had some kind of part to play in it, also given that the fact that, the main symbol of the church has ended up being like a cross shape, which is actually on there, that there's some connection going on there with that. I think it had a significant part to play in the whole thing. It's actually stated in there that it had a lot to do with the war side of it, right? But it seems that when you've got these wars like the Crusades and so forth, that they just lead to more wars, right? But this is the thing. What is the point in having an army? And what is the point in having national security? And it's just the insult, the actual insult to say suddenly, all that money that you spent on the army, we're just going to scrap it now. Actually, after everyone's died, look at the names on the walls. And by the way, those names won't be worth anything because we're going to bulldoze them soon because we're having a new digital system, right? So all those war memorials and monuments, right? That like your grandfather, fought in the war and died, and all the names are on the freaking memorials. We're just going to bulldoze down because so we get rid of the old system. Just the insult of it, it's just absolutely ridiculous that and how it's been done in Parliament by Starmer now. Starmer isn't the Prime Minister of England. he needs to face prosecution for the CPS in contempt, and there's going to be a lot of members of the staff in the CPS as well, so he's trying to cover up for the whole CPS, and there's the police as well. So, you know, and it's these non-departmental government agencies have all been set up, right, under these corporate think tank policies and strategies. They're not actually acting on these complaints that we're calling them out on now. That's what I said in another video, why, you know, Ofcom has had 77,000 complaints. It's taken them before they do anything against that Mike Graham, right? So, like I said, we're having a petition against these organisations, and I don't think they're not acting on complaints. You know, you used to be able to just go down to the sheriff office, get a warrant, and then go fucking arrest someone and prosecute them. If we learned it in school, right? If they'd have taught us how to prosecute someone in school quite easily, we could have fucking done it ourselves, you know? You can go apply to the court, send some evidence and get a warrant and fucking go and arrest him yourself, right? And it actually would get the job done, right? Because then you've got capable people who can access and use legal processes, right? What you've got with these non-departmental government agencies is that you're putting all the action and power into them, but they're not acting until they get a certain number or level of complaints, until it passes a certain threshold, right? And there's multiple people complaining, and the police, therefore, are not actually acting in that area. Like, you know, they don't act in advertisements anymore because it's the Advertising Standards Authority. But these non-departmental government agencies, I don't think that they are getting the job done. I just think that they're actually a waste of money. We've built them all. They're an utter and complete waste, because if you instead did not put the money into those departments, I mean, I wouldn't have done that looking at it now, because the Electoral Commission, Advertising Standards Authority, Ofcom, all these companies, they've got a building, they've got staff, they've got resources, they've got all these things, right? If you'd have just taught, you know, when you go to school, you learn that, you know. But the thing is, Starmer's even wanting to get rid of private schools now, because I don't actually think that Starmer wants to be educated about anything, or he doesn't want kids to be educated about anything, right? Why do we even need that standards authority? If you go to school and they just teach you how to do a prosecution, right, and present evidence in a court, then if an advert pisses you off, then prosecute the cunts. Just go to civil court and prosecute them, right? They're not wanting us to even do that, because then you win, and then the private companies lose. And not only that, they actually get prosecuted and convicted, right? And then they might have to give you compensation. You could do that yourself if you taught it, right? And this is why Starmer's wanting to scrap all the private schools, and he's only wanting to have particular people who come out of universities who can actually run all these systems and update this digital framework, right? Because Starmer, right, this is the thing with Starmer, right? Starmer doesn't want to make citizens who are better than him, who can whoop his ass and beat him, right? Because he's crap. He's a crap barrister. He's shit at law. Starmer is shit at law. He's the shittest shit crap barrister who ever walked on the face of fucking planet Earth, right? And if anyone in school was taught anything, right, you'd have a queue of 70,000 people queuing up to fucking prosecute him, right? And we won't need the CPS. We don't need the Crown Prosecution Service, right? Teach people how to do things in school. And that's what the Conservative Party never wanted to do, give people knowledge and education, right? And this is what Jeremy Corbyn is about, you know, people actually being properly educated and having intelligence and knowledge. This is the thing. You know, I don't know how Bill Gates has got where he is, only because no one can afford, all these lawyers and solicitors are demanding all these massive amounts of money, all these extortionate fees. There is no access to law now. And that's actually why they've put it all into these non-departmental government agencies, because none of us can bring private legal suits. And to get free private legal funding, like pro bono or whatever, they won't take anything on. And why won't they take anything on? Because they're all members of these organisations and institutes, and they're all affiliated, or we ain't got the capacity bollocks. This is the thing. They don't want... this accept, submit and consent regime, right, is actually also wanting to scrap the legal system. It's having YouTube staff make judicial decisions, and their policies are so vague, they're even vaguer than those human rights articles. And the type of policies they're coming out with is like any reason or no reason. So, it's not even like having, your own peers judge it in a court. It's like strangers judging or whatever, and you don't even know who they are. And then Blair's like, oh yeah, like freedom of information, except freedom of information about the private businesses and companies that are taking us over, right? And how it turned out is that, it actually wasn't really about us having freedom of information about the government. They wanted all the private companies to have the information about us so they could infiltrate us and take us over. I mean, Fastjet Performance Channel, who's meant to have been in the military, right? This should be completely and totally fucking alarming, It is actually a invasion and war. There's no doubt about it. And not just for one country or the other country, for the whole world, It's just it's megalomania. I mean, surely to suggest that, right? Look, right. Bill Gates has actually suggested this, right? He's actually saying, we're going to have all of the world under one regime, right? But surely, I mean, to propose it has got to be actually violating some of the laws of these countries, because actually they're all subscribed to the fact that we're meant to protect ourselves from foreign threats. So the only way that you can get it through is democratically, but in order to have the most effective democratic campaign, you need to be able to use the latest technology in communication, which at the moment is like Facebook and YouTube. But yet, Facebook and YouTube is the one that's all removing our political material in England, because we don't have Section 230, which is just insane. While those members of Parliament have been, all of their pages are just filled with election adverts. And they've even encouraged us. They didn't tell us not to put election material up, right? Now, the BBC went on and said, oh, everyone join Facebook, right? Why didn't the BBC go on there and say, hey, it's not a good idea to put, election material all over Facebook because it's not fair, right? It's not fair on independent candidates. So, don't just go around posting and sharing Conservative and Labour election material because it's not fair on independent people, If the BBC would have said that on Radio 1 and Radio 2, and if these newswomen on ITV who are obsessed with their own careers and they don't really care what they say as long as it's them on the screen talking and got a microphone stuck in someone's place and it's the latest, coolest thing, right? If they would have said to people, oh yeah, people shouldn't be, putting election material up there. But this is the thing. Everyone's just putting Reform Party stuff up everywhere. It's not actually fair on independent candidates who are standing in these by-elections for councils or for Parliament, in between general elections. It's having an effect everywhere. People are seeing it on the internet. They didn't tell people not to do it or advise against doing it because it was helping those main parties out. And this is the problem with Clegg. We're a bit behind with the legislation. Can't keep up with all these digital companies. No, you could keep up with Facebook because you were the fuckers who told everyone that it existed before. We wouldn't have even known about Facebook. So Clegg's like, can't keep up with these digital platforms. No, Clegg. The BBC told everyone about the platforms. The BBC advertised Facebook to England in a pitch, right? A sales pitch using broadcasters' money, right, aimed at the public to create digital identities. It's not a matter of the platforms keeping up with it. We weren't on the platforms. We didn't know about Facebook. So how can it be Facebook rushing ahead when I'm not fucking on there? And I didn't know they fucking existed, did I, right? The BBC introduced us to the fucking platform. So, how is it that the platform's rushing ahead and the government not keeping up with it? Yeah, the government seem to be keeping up with it all right because they're advertising it on all the contact pages. This government is illegal. They have not won an election. It is election corruption, widespread election corruption from the 2004 election. None of these MPs are in there legitimately, and least of all Starmer. And I don't think that any of those elections are lawful since around 2007, because I think that that the MPs have all been using those platforms unfairly to promote their parties, when there should have been a lot more fairness to independent candidates and minority parties. And now, you know, apparently you're not even going to be able to engage at all, you know. And since this is the thing, right? Gates is a businessman. He's not even a politician. It's like a product. He's a businessman. He's never actually won an election in his life. He's never actually been voted into a council, and he's never been voted into a government. So, but yet he is presenting a governance package for the whole planet in this pitch here, right? He's actually presenting a governance package for all planet Earth, but he's never been elected once in his whole life. And he's like selling it as if we're going to buy it, but it has to be made legal and we have to agree to it. And in order to do that, we're needing to use his platforms to oppose it, which it seems like Zuckerberg and Sergey Brin are actually in control of and actually removing some of the material, at least in our country, unlawfully. So the manoeuvre they're doing is illegal. It's not lawfully done, just like in any battle in history. You know, in the country that is being invaded, the invading force is never doing it lawfully, you know, because it's a foreign invasion, right? It's just that this time, you know, and this is the thing, this isn't even our government now pitching this is Gates. It's like a business. I mean, it's almost kind of like, you know, it almost is like, you know, rocking up in Australia, you know, like an unfolding the boat and then just pressing a button and then so the government just opens, and then it's like sticking the flag in the ground, isn't it? You know, like just turning up at the continent and sticking the flag in the ground and, oh, I claim this land. But, like, literally with the whole planet, right? But at least it's another government when they come over. It's another queen or another king, or they're on behalf of another king or queen. This is on behalf of, like, a private company. Do you know what I mean? You know, what battles has this guy won? You know, has he already won some fights and battles or whatever? Is he actually the undeclared, unofficial king of the world? Because, you see, if it was Charles who were doing it, like I said earlier, I don't think the Americans would accept it. They won't be up for it. Because then, you know, it actually goes against what America means, doesn't it? If it was Charles who was presenting this package, right, so we're going to have the whole world under my digital ID thing, the Americans wouldn't have it. They would kick off. You know, so, I mean, it surely got to be, you know, coming from some business person or some private enterprise package, which is financially, it's all through finance. You know, there is no democratic vote behind this package, and this is the thing. Everything in Parliament which gets presented, obviously except private bills. Well, that's the joke in here, private bill, right? You know, is it Bill's private bill? This is the thing, right? We can oppose a private bill. Most of the things getting presented in government are meant to be represented by the MPs on behalf of their electors, right? Unless it's one political party that has taken possession of the MP or taken possession of multiple MPs. So, you know, it's like Trump with his big, beautiful bill, isn't it? You know, it really is like Bill Gates walking into Parliament with a private bill in the Parliament of each country and saying, hey, you know, I'm going to take over the world, right? You know, and we have to petition against it, really. And that's kind of what we're actually doing now. We're in the process of doing. But the fact that not many people work on paper anymore, merely because, you know, they're a bit lazy, right? And when they're going out and doing all these big protests around everywhere, that effort and time could have actually been put into better use, going around, spreading out and going around houses, asking people to get more signatures rather than just marching down the middle of the street, particularly in London. So it's like the main modern communication tools are already, when those are the ones that were given to use, kind of like under the control of this group of people, which is, you know, a lot of those e-petitions, when you share them, they haven't been working on Facebook Messenger. It just opens to a blank page. There are lots of little glitches like that, which clearly have been intentional and obvious, right? Getting removed from groups, all kinds of things like that, you know? And for them to get into this position, it's just not right. I don't think that it's right. It's just ridiculous. Just the concept of it, after everything that's happened in history, right? There's a lack of respect for people's families and people's feelings and people's thoughts. It's all sold on like this convenience thing, but it's not convenience, it's obedience. It's like convenience, which is actually obedience, you know. I actually, you know, I don't know whether it's true if this, like, the sunspike theory is real, whether or not, if there was a massive solar flare, which was a big one, it could take out all these electrical things and harm it, you know, definitely the satellites and things like that. So, you know, this is why, wasn't that why Trump said he wanted to scrap all the solar panels on the wind because they were useless? Because didn't they have this example, whether it was a setup or not, I don't know, but they had this example where all the solar panels got taken out by giant ice balls, right? And that's why they scrapped the solar panel. So to have the whole world run by a digital system where everything gets put on digital, including the electoral system, when there's still the possibility of a huge solar flare taking it all out, and then it being rendered useless, I don't know how long it could take to repair it, but what if it was an extended, prolonged period, right? That was effectively like the same kind of principle behind why the Americans said, oh, we're not going to invest in solar panels because a lot of giant ice balls could take them out, right? So, you know, it's upsetting, you know, because Bill, he comes across like, hey, I'm a normal guy, you know, I just sit there in a chair and talk like normal. So, you know, to criticize someone like that, it upsets me, you know, it upsets me. Because, like, and I think this is the thing with these people, you know, like, oh, you know, like, it's all, you know, psychology, you know, it's like, oh, Kermy Wormy. It's like, oh, get the violin out. You know, this is the thing. It's all this kind of like, you know, we're gonna feel upset for them if we criticise them or kick off, but they're just like, hey, you know, let's just fucking write off all your history. It's no sweat, you know. It's just the absolute cheek of it and irony of it, you know, it's like, oh, so I've got $1 trillion, you know, we'll just write off your history and all of your full electoral system, you know, and all your rights and everything. And, you know, you know, don't worry about Hitler, you know, it was, I know that you sent all your, you know, family went to war to protect your country from another country, but, you know, hey, like, you know, we're scrapping countries now, you know, I'm sure your granddad won't mind, you know, this is the thing, it's like, it's like, you've got to have a complete and total disregard for people's own personal thoughts and feelings. We would just you know, it's like, oh, you know, like, I've got this idea, and, you know, everyone should do it because I say, just because I've got loads of money, purely based on the fact that he's got a load of money, you know. Who else would propose it? Even Charles is not, you know, even Charles hasn't got the political courage to say it's his idea, because if it actually came from Charles, right, then the Americans definitely would not go with it. They wouldn't accept it, right? So that means to say that it's actually about who it is and not just what it is, right? So, I think they can only even dare propose it if it's someone like Bill Gates who does it. And it's not even Mark Zuckerberg saying that, it's my idea, because Zuckerberg, he was sat in a college, campus, prattling around on a computer, making some geek site, right? Like in 1999 or whatever. He wasn't even a multi-billionaire. So he's just become a multi-billionaire, literally, in the amount of time where I've just been, knocking about doing this and that. It's like, what you been up to, Mark? I'm a billionaire now. It's like, yeah, it's like, what you been up to? I was knocking around doing a few things, time's flown, isn't it, painting cardboard boxes like Frank Sidebottom's head, getting on my skateboard, driving around the country a little bit, buying a couple of cans of Diet Coke. What you been up to? I'm a multi-billionaire now. And I'm proposing to take over the world with a new digital ID system. Oh, you come a long way. It's not an idea based on any of your previous, historical ancestors by any chance. Oh, no, nothing like that. I just conjured it up now myself. It's like, oh, that's a bit of a bold decision. This is a thing. Can you believe that people have sailed in boats across the ocean for months, with like gunpowder and cannons and fired cannonballs, at the Chinese government, from ships, and found new continents which have got, people spread across them that haven't had any contact, with anyone who's even made metal. And now, suddenly, we find infiltrated in every home. Well, 60 million homes in England, apparently. There's 60 million people with a smartphone, right? In the matter of, well, I was just going down to the pub with my Nokia break, sending a basic text message, are you going to the pub later? You can do that. I don't have to ring them up anymore, I have to down to the pub, right? And now, it's suddenly like, literally, in like that, it's like, oh, I know this person, I've got his full digital ID profile on his phone, and by the way, we're taking over all the world's governments, now, come on, we're tapping the feet on the floor, come on, Starmer, get it through. And it's like, what? And everyone's just like, what the fuck? You got, surely, how are these government, we've got these women, like Rachel Reeves, going on television in front of the whole country. And she's like, oh, yes, we still care about poor people. And here's calendar news. And someone had a very sad, tragic road accident the other day. It's like all these things. Oh, why? Because someone's upset about it. Oh, and the family must feel upset. Okay, yeah, I get that, right? But they're doing all these things. And they're trying to make out like, oh, yeah, someone is very upset or sad, or they're victims of crimes. They need justice, right? Like, oh, we're doing all this because of people's thoughts and feelings, oh, tragedy here, tragedy there, or poor people, or housing, all these things. Oh, we're doing it because of the feelings and thoughts of people, right? But here comes Bill, and it's like, hey, I've got this new digital ID system. Well, fuck the military. We don't need it anymore. It's like, It's like, oh, well, just don't worry about those war memorials. Just, those fucking bulldoze them. Like, fuck them. Someone else's problem, isn't it? It's like, it makes you wonder how the American military, right, who have even, had all these people being sent over to Vietnam and shot and killed, and even some plenty of American soldiers have been shot and killed, right? So supposedly protecting America from all these other countries. And, Bill's like, oh, we don't need that. Fuck that. It's just like a practice exercise, For what? Well, no, it's like, I'm going to be in charge of my new digital ID thing now. All we have to do is get Congress to vote it through. It's like a person who has never been elected or won an election ever. Wouldn't it be interesting to see let's say, the polling stations all, were open next week, and every single news channel said, we're going to impeach Bill Gates, for megalomania or whatever, or, treason to the world. Wouldn't it be interesting to see how many people actually would go and turn up to vote for it, right? To impeach Bill Gates. Wouldn't it be interesting to test that theory to see, Bill, yes or no, like two options, go down the polling station, Bill Gates, thumbs up or thumbs down. Wouldn't it be actually interesting to see the results of that and have a vote on it, But the thing is, we're not. It's all about whether these MPs are pushing it through and doing it act by act, stage by stage, guys by guys, all these, implementing these new updates to the business site, or, this or that, using the BBC to get everyone to on Facebook to make a digital ID. It's, whenever the first time I heard the term strategic planning for the town centre, right? You can't have strategic planning which is for the people, because there's always going to be people who object to it. So the strategy, if you're a business and you want to do these telephone cables or telephone wires or bus lanes or whatever the fuck it is, right? And your strategy is to get that done at all costs and make money out of it, you can't be doing it just for, I'm doing it for my customers. No, because some of the customers are going to be the ones who don't want it, right? Or, some of the people are going to be the ones who aren't customers or don't want it, right? So you're trying to beat your opposition. You're trying to make out that everyone wants it, but they don't, right? So the strategy is not just how should it be built or where should it be built or designing it. The strategy is how are we going to get it through and approved. And these councils are just approving things, but they've already got contracts with these companies, and then they're already under these long-term year contracts. So it's already it's like the deal's more or less already done. So what's the point in going and voting for councillors? This is the thing. The problem with these people, right, is that the business people now, right, they're not there to make us a product. Cook me a soup, or, if you ask them to make something how you want it made, that they're all doing things now more for what they want to do and they want us to have, not what we ask them to make us, right? And that's the problem. And when companies and businesses can come up with their own ideas and do what they want, right, and then hopefully people will just, walk up like lemons and buy it. And that's the problem. We had the skills and we were making the things until the Industrial Revolution, and then we lost skills and we were in the factories working for less, and then there was loads of uproar about that, and now we've gone steps further where these companies are dictating and actually installing reality onto us how they want it and strategizing what the world's going to be like, while they're distracting us with entertainment like stupid game shows and stupid chase the money which you're never going to get, or holidays. And actually, it is dictating the future. This is what I've said about technology. You can see it in their language and dialogue. Oh, we're going to have this. This is, in 20 years, we will have this. You will have that. That is a dictatorial language, right? You're having this, and this is going to be, and then that will be that, and then we are going to do this, and then that, right? You're in a dictatorial dialogue. You're not actually saying, oh, what would you like? How would you like this? Where would you like it? You're not asking questions. And you're not in Parliament debating whether we should or should not have it. Because that's the dialogue. The dialogue is the debate of the pros and cons. All we're getting out of these tech companies is, in another 20 years, we'll have done this, we'll have that, you're having this, you're having that. It's a dictatorial system. And I think the development of technologies, particularly when it was a wider group of people who were engaged in it, when you've got people who have got skills like gold, jewellery making, or weaving, or gilding, or whatever, there's many, many different people doing it and doing it slightly different, and then these new techniques catch on and develop and then, outcompete each other and so forth. But also they had a lot of discussions about it. And in these guilds, they had meetings and arguments and debates and then put things to government. Whereas now, everyone just turns up to work, does what they're told, and only these executives are making these decisions with a designer and a product developer and your microchip guy. And like they say, it's a small number of people, but all the staff are under these policy administration. They just turn up and do what they're told, right? And these people have they've been spoiled to get into a position where they've managed to get themselves into a dictatorial positions. And now it's got to a point where when you challenge Parliament and complain, we're nothing. We're nothing, right? They won't even let you run the complaint with the evidence on there. And they won't allow you to collect compelling numbers of signatures with compelling evidence attached. And with a right to argue whether you are right or wrong about that, have an argument and debate whether it is right or wrong. They just will not even let you submit. And that to me is, the e-petitions team at the moment are, it's clear to see that administrative model is what is happening in all these non-department government agencies now, right? And they've been blocking and obstructing a very large number of complaints from getting action because they're complaints against these big businesses like Facebook and YouTube and what they're doing, what they're implementing. And the government certainly aren't going to have, Ofcom or the Electoral Commission or Advertising Standards have big legal cases against these big platforms and starting taking them out or taking them to court or severe legal consequences, because Parliament have been advertising and promoting these on their contact pages, like, Facebook, Blue Sky, X or whatever, Instagram. And isn't it strange that it's only like, Mark Zuckerberg owns, at least, he's got Facebook and Threads, Facebook, Threads, Instagram. That's one guy. Then you've got Twitter, which only recently was taken over by Elon Musk and changed to X. Then you've got that Blue Sky, which is a new one. So not even five guys there who own them between them, but they're promoting them all for them. So it's I think it's a hostile takeover, and yet we're like, oh, it's Bill, don't want to upset Bill's feelings, oh, sad, oh, ruining Bill's dreams and plans, feel sad. This is what Jimmy Dore was saying, Jimmy Dore was saying this. So I think it's despicable, but they're even doing that, they're knocking these films out, oh, Despicable Me, oh, Woe is Me, Despicable Me with all the minions, right? That's meant to represent us, all the idiots turning up at the factories, right? And then, oh, so what if, it doesn't matter, it's some kind of pitch, some kind of like, Bill Gates, oh, Despicable Me, like, don't worry, it's only Despicable Me, right? How, I'm only an evil guru who's trying to take over the world. It's like, they try to generate, affection for these people and so forth. The whole movie industry is actually been a nightmare, because I think that's what's causing a lot of the crime and incidents and people turning up. That they're going for enjoyment and thrills, I mean, once you come to the intelligent realization, whether you like those movies or you've watched them or not, they are, people go there to be entertained. That means that they think that it's entertaining and fun. Yet there's people getting killed and explosions and all kinds of things, right? But this is when have the government in England, right, ever said like, okay, might it be that all these people are getting killed in a film, run over by a tram, and people paid money to go see it, and then it actually was exciting, and afterwards they said, I really enjoyed that, right? Hey, I just enjoyed that. Someone got run over by a tram, and they even made it look, oh man, I thought that wasn't real, it looked real. There was someone's actually head exploded everywhere, and I actually paid £5 to see it, and afterwards I said that I enjoyed it, right? And then it's like, then Starmer, is maybe head of the Crown Prosecution Service, he's like in the fucking CPS, and he's like, someone just ran over someone's head with a tram. It's like, oh, this is terrible, no one should have to see that or hear about it. It might actually cause psychological, injury to someone if they even heard about it or saw it happen, right? But then there's a woman it's like, oh no, it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy, and then all these people must be punished, right? Because this should never happen. You shouldn't even think about these things. And then there's a woman going on the fucking news, right, with a microphone going, oh, this a terrible tragedy, and then someone's, head got fucking run over by a tram, and then there's like drama, and you can tell, oh, I love this job, I love this, oh, I'm going to work, oh, I can't wait to get down to the set, she'd fly in with a fucking helicopter, right, oh, I'm so excited, suddenly, right, okay, then, the makeup artist, like, okay, put a sad face on, and now I'm reporting from outside the tram station where an immense tragedy happened, It's like, yeah, right. It's like, oh, it's a big scoop, it's a big story, right? It's like, it's the biggest story, it's the biggest scoop. These people can't fucking wait to get down there, and everyone's got to know about it, right? Everyone fucking knows about it. These people there's something actually fucking wrong with them. They're not actually right. They don't even actually know what the fuck they're doing. And this is why there's like, incidents, crimes, all these horrible things happening, right? But people are paying to go and see it. But I'm not the one saying, close down the movie industry, because then, I'm the villain or whatever, right? But, there is some effect going on here, right? That there's some kind of influence and effect going on where bad things are happening, and certain people seem to be actually labeling it as entertaining or a good thing, and that only has emerged since, I suppose the 1950s era, although they had dramatizations on the radio and they've always had books and stuff like that. But I'm not saying that movies should be banned or that, people should go for prison for making those movies, but you're allowed to criticise it, And I think that I think Bill Gates probably thinks that it's probably a good idea to force people under this new world global system, to make all those type of changes. But it's the wrong way of doing it. It's a completely and total wrong way of going about doing it, right? Instead, I mean, he's absolutely loaded. Why isn't he? He's meant to have an army of journalists. Why isn't his army of journalists over the last 10 years been writing and talking about the, the pros and cons of the effects of movies and stuff like that, or why aren't they appearing on the news programmes and things like that talking about it? But they haven't done. They've been more interested in just making pure money for themselves, buying up the land everywhere, This is the thing. They go about things the wrong way, and now they're trying to impose all these fully, totally automated global systems on everyone.